majority of Muslims are
people
peaceful.
with terroristic ideologies here and all around the world. What does that have to do with whether Muslims belong in American society as a group?
Yeah, and let's be clear.
I'd like to hear the answer.
I'm talking about what Mike Johnson was saying.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what he didn't say.
But you haven't read his full quote.
What I'm talking about is what he didn't say.
You said Senator Chris Murphy was not trustworthy, but in your mind, Pete Hegseth is trustworthy.
I actually said he was
okay,
partisan.
but in your mind, Pete Hegseth is not partisan?
And left a classified briefing just to come out and poop on the
Is Donald
American
Trump
military.
partisan in his rhetoric around this? Is Pete Hegseth? Is Lindsey Graham? I can point to anyone in this administration that is leading this effort, and they are hyper-partisan, and they're honestly making us look bad.
In today's video, Adam Mockler and Abby Phillip silences Lydia Moynihan on Newsnight, with Abby Phillip as a heated debate erupts over US foreign policy, rising tensions with Iran, and the political fallout at home. Adam Mockler and Abby Phillip push back with sharp facts about the costly wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and the impact of inflammatory rhetoric in American politics, while Lydia Moynihan tries to defend the Republican narrative. So let's dive in and watch how Adam Mockler and Abby Phillip shut down Lydia Moynihan on Newsnight with Abby Phillip.
Few things. First of all, my grandpa moved from Syria in the early 80s, and my dad's whole side of the family, they are Muslim. So anti-Muslim bigotry has been around for decades and decades. I will say, my grandpa who moved here, the Muslim community he lives in Indiana, is full of doctors, heart surgeons, people who have helped their community. I also find it very ironic that Republicans are so welcoming to any form of bigotry. They're so welcoming to anti-trans bigotry. They're so welcoming to anti-Muslim bigotry. You're making a face, but these are bigoted comments they made. But the moment that bigotry is targeted towards them, they freak the hell out. You have to stop any bigotry before it enters your movement. I just find it funny when Randy Fine will be super Islamophobic, but then he'll be on the floor whenever something is directed at Jewish people, which, by the way, you should never be bigoted towards anybody. Stop the bigotry before it enters your movement. But how do you only micro-focus on for certain forms of bigotry?
I don't think there's anything any Republican in Congress could do right now that would get condemned by Mike Johnson, because the practical thing is he has got a one-vote cushion, a one-vote margin, because Thomas Massie often votes against Republicans. And so, you know, we saw him for the last couple of weeks stay mum and not condemn Tony Gonzalez and make him resign, despite that he had been having an affair with a staffer who ended up dousing herself with gasoline and setting herself on fire and dying. And so there is nothing that any Republican can do right now that Mike Johnson is going to condemn.
Is that true? That Mike Johnson will not draw a line anywhere, even here?
What Mike Johnson said is, he said people who refuse to assimilate and follow a radical ideology that seeks to commit violence and terrorist acts have no business being in the country. I think most people would.
Well, that's not what he was asked about. He was asked about.
People would agree with that.
He was asked about two congressmen who said Muslims have no place in American society, and one of them saying, as Jamil points out, that if it's a choice between dogs and Muslims, it's not a difficult one. He wasn't asked about people with radical ideologies. He was asked about Muslims.
But the only reason
he actually said
the vast majority of Muslims are peaceful.
I think it's a great tactic to try to answer a different question than was asked. But the actual question is there a line anywhere right now on Capitol Hill or elsewhere in the Republican movement when it comes to anti-Muslim?
I can't speak for Mike Johnson, but I would say we've had 2 terrorist attacks here in the last 10 days.
What does that have to do with Muslims?
So can we condemn those? Why are we?
Of course. What does that have to do with Muslims?
What does that have to do with Muslims?
There is a radical strain of Islam that's led to these terrorist attacks. Obviously, the vast majority of Muslims are
people
peaceful.
with terroristic ideologies here and all around the world. What does that have to do with whether Muslims belong in American society as a group?
Yeah, and let's be clear.
I'd like to hear the answer.
I'm talking about what Mike Johnson was saying.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about what he didn't say.
But you haven't read his full quote.
What I'm talking about is what he didn't say.
We can be tough on Islamic extremism without compromising our commitment to religious liberty.
The bigger issue goes beyond a TV argument. It's about how political rhetoric shapes public perception of entire communities. Muslim Americans make up a relatively small portion of the US. population, but studies from the Pew Research Center show they are highly integrated into American society, working in fields like healthcare, engineering, education, and public service. Many are small business owners and professionals who contribute directly to their local economies and communities every single day. There's also a long history of Muslim Americans serving the country in national security roles. Thousands have served in the U.S. military, intelligence agencies, and law enforcement, particularly in the years following the September 11th attacks. Counterterrorism experts have repeatedly said that cooperation with Muslim communities has been one of the most effective tools in preventing extremist violence because local partnerships help authorities identify threats early while maintaining trust. Another important piece of context is how extremism actually shows up in the United States. Data collected by groups like the Anti-Defamation League has shown that in recent years, a large share of domestic extremist incidents have been linked to far-right or white supremacist movements. That doesn't erase the threat from other forms of extremism, but it demonstrates why experts warn against focusing suspicion on a single religious group. That's why arguments emphasizing fairness and accountability resonate. The United States has long defined itself by religious freedom and pluralism. Protecting those values means confronting extremism wherever it appears without stereotyping millions of ordinary people who simply practice their faith and live their lives.
The other thing that he could have said is that people should go take a walk around Arlington Cemetery. And particularly now that we are at war and that Donald Trump is putting our service members at risk, and take a look at all of the tombs at Arlington Cemetery that have a crescent moon for the Muslims that have served and lost their lives for this country.
I was going to say really quickly, to build on your point, it's unrealistic to think that Mike Johnson will lead in this capacity when the person setting the tone for the entire party is someone posting AI memes of Obama as a gorilla, calling for 100, like the DHS account called for 100 million deportations in America. They clearly have racially biased policies, and I think that that's manifesting with a silence around this stuff.
We're going to blow the hell out of these people. We're going to unleash holy hell on them here any minute now.
If somebody threatens me and my family multiple times in over 47 years, tries to hurt me and my family, I'm going to do something about it.
Mr. President, unleash the American military with Israel on Hezbollah tonight. Finish these bastards off. They have American blood on their hands. I go back to South Carolina. I'm asking them to send their sons and daughters over to the Mideast. What I want you to do in the Mideast to our friends in Saudi Arabia and other places, step forward and say, this is my fight too. I join America.
You may say he's not a good messenger, but Lindsey Graham spends a hell of a lot of time on the phone and in person with Donald Trump, plays golf with him, and it goes on Fox to give him direct messages, speak to camera, and say, Mr. President, do this and that. And we know that Donald Trump listens to people like Lindsey Graham.
I think he's already facing a lot of backlash, especially after the Wall Street Journal report that suggested he was the one to try and push Israel to then persuade Trump. I don't think people are happy with Lindsey Graham right now.
Lindsey Graham is still talking every single day, and he's still beating.
Oh, honey, he'll be dead.
And listen, but I think it's so fascinating because back in the day, Trump used to call Lindsey Graham and his ilk warmongers. Yeah. He used to suggest that it was like Dick Cheney and Lindsey Graham and a cabal together. He now has Lindsey Graham in his ear every day. And I think that's what some people are worried about, is that the mission creep has already begun. Trump has already shifted from saying that he was anti-war to being very interested in doing whatever he thinks he needs to do.
You want to know what makes me so angry listening to people like Lindsey Graham and listening to the $1 billion a day toll? Is that the neocon boomers surrounding Donald Trump are mortgaging my generation's future for another endless, maybe endless, but another very expensive Middle Eastern war. We tried this with Iraq. We tried this with Afghanistan. It left us in trillions and trillions of dollars in debt. We pay $1 trillion per year just on the interest for our debt. This is amassing, and it's going to affect my generations for decades to come, because the old people know they can start wars because young people don't have the power to stop them. So the old people make us foot the bill. And you know what I don't like the most out of all this is the gaslighting. They say that it's fiscally irresponsible for us to invest in healthcare, for us to invest at home and my generation in the future. The Affordable Care Act subsidies that they were arguing over were $50 billion, $50 billion, and they've already asked for $50 billion. So there's just
I can see. Yeah. I am, from the wing of the party that doesn't ascribe to the Lindsey Graham, let's root and toot and shootin' kind of stuff. Like, I just don't believe that. But the thing he said that we didn't put on the TV screen, and I think is very accurate, is that you can't allow a regime that routinely chants death to America to have enriched uranium.
The focus shouldn't just be on political back and forth. It's really about the standards leaders set when discussing religion, national security, and military action. In a country built on the First Amendment, condemning broad religious attacks should be simple. Muslim Americans have served in the U.S. military for decades, and Arlington National Cemetery contains graves marked with the crescent symbol, honoring Muslim service members who died defending the country. That reality often gets lost when political rhetoric paints entire communities with suspicion. According to research from the Pew Research Center, Muslim Americans consistently express strong levels of civic engagement and belief in democratic institutions. Many work in fields like medicine, technology, and education, contributing directly to the American economy. National security experts have also emphasized that partnerships with Muslim communities have helped law enforcement identify threats and prevent extremist activity. The other major piece of the debate is the cost of war. The United States has already spent over $2 trillion on the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, according to long-term estimates from the Costs of War Project. Those conflicts lasted for decades and left lasting economic consequences that younger generations will still be paying for through federal debt and interest payments for years to come. That's why the concerns Navarro and Mockler raise resonate with many younger voters. For them, the conversation isn't just about foreign policy strategy. It's about whether political leaders are repeating the same cycle of expensive military conflicts while neglecting investments at home. History has shown how quickly limited military actions can expand into long-term commitments with massive economic and human costs.
You can't allow a regime that routinely and often
what
frequently,
they do? What if they don't get the enriched uranium, which it seems like they acknowledge
it's a problem
to lawmakers that they won't?
In their acknowledgement, they're acknowledging that, number one, the bombing raid last year wasn't complete, that the JCPOA was moot, that this country has continuously sought to enrich uranium for weapons purposes over the last 40 years. You cannot let the JCPOA was I'm talking. You let this country exist for 40 years where they routinely empowered and financed their proxies to attack innocent civilians in the entire region. You cannot let this country have a nuclear war. That is the moral justification of the war.
Sure.
Maybe Lindsey Graham shouldn't be.
If they don't actually accomplish that objective, then what's the point?
That should be the objective.
I think that's really where we are.
I agree that they shouldn't have nuclear weapons, but it just bothers me that 8 months ago they named this the 12-day war. And maybe that war was contained within 12 days, but we're like 200 days out and there is still a war going on. So they are just saying that the war is over and then changing the guidelines or the goalposts on their justification over and over.
He's talking about the
12-day war, but it's still going.
Talk about catastrophic consequences as a result of what's happening at the Strait of Hormuz. We've now Trump lifted sanctions on Russia. And so, I feel very bad for Ukraine today.
Just think about how much chaos the Trump administration has caused in the past few weeks. They have spiked oil prices. They've shuttered stock markets across the globe. They posted a tweet today. Our Energy Secretary, Chris Wright, posted a tweet today saying that a ship was escorted through the Strait of Hormuz, and he deleted it within 10 minutes, which just absolutely blew up markets across the globe. Donald Trump has made the world more catastrophic after saying that he would be America first, anti-interventionalist. He said that he was a populist, make America great again person. But instead, Russia now has more ability to not only kill Ukrainians, but to target or to help Iran target U.S. troops. We saw 8 U.S. troops die. We saw 8 U.S. troops die. And when we learn that Russia is providing Iran with intelligence, this administration is apathetic to it. They're like, oh, they're not doing as good of a job as they could. They said that Russia might not, what did they say? Russia isn't doing a good job helping Iran because Iran's not doing well. They're just apathetic to the fact that
if Iran is denied a nuclear weapon, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Of course, it's a good thing. Of course.
So is it worth taking some strategic risk? Is it worth taking some economic risk?
The word strategic, I'm going to take problem with the word strategic. There was no strategy from this. Listen,
is it
1 minute ago,
How do you know?
1 minute ago.
Are you on the phone? You got Pete Hegseth on that phone?
I'm not. It's funny to me that 1 minute ago you said Senator Chris Murphy was not trustworthy, but in your mind, Pete Hegseth is trustworthy.
I actually said he was
okay,
partisan.
but in your mind, Pete Hegseth is not partisan
and left a classified briefing just to come out and poop on the.
Is Donald Trump partisan in his rhetoric around this? Is Pete Hegseth? Is Lindsey Graham? I can point to anyone in this administration that is leading this effort, and they are hyper partisan, and they're honestly making us look bad. We Americans should be terrified about it.
When conversations like this come up, the debate usually isn't about whether Iran should have nuclear weapons. Most people across the political spectrum agree that it shouldn't. The bigger issue is whether the strategy being used to stop that outcome actually works. Over the years, many national security experts have pointed out that military strikes alone rarely eliminate nuclear ambitions. In fact, intelligence assessments have often shown that bombing nuclear facilities can delay a program but rarely erase the knowledge or capability behind it. There's also historical context here that matters. The nuclear agreement known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action placed strict limits on Iran's uranium enrichment and allowed international inspectors from the International Atomic Energy Agency to monitor facilities. Multiple verification reports at the time indicated Iran was largely complying with the deal's restrictions before it collapsed. Once that framework disappeared, enrichment levels began climbing again, which many analysts warned could make the situation more volatile rather than more stable. Another factor people often overlook is the economic ripple effect of instability in the Persian Gulf. The Strait of Hormuz handles roughly a fifth of the world's oil supply, meaning any escalation there can quickly shake global markets. Even small incidents in that region have historically caused oil prices to spike and financial markets to react dramatically because so much global energy passes through that narrow corridor. That's why critics like Mockler focus on the lack of a clear long-term plan. Preventing nuclear proliferation is important, but strategy matters just as much as the goal itself. Without a realistic diplomatic framework or defined endgame, history shows conflicts in the region can drag on far longer than originally promised. Pause. Are you getting tired of getting half the story from biased news sources? One outlet says one thing and another says the complete opposite. How are you supposed to know what's actually true? That's where ground news comes in. It lets you compare how different media outlets, left, right, and center are covering the same story. So you can see the full picture instead of just the echo chamber. And here's the best part. Click the link in the description and get 40% off the Vantage tier, which gives you even deeper insights into media bias and political trends. Stay informed, think for yourself, and check out Ground News in the description down below.